Crime and punishment often go hand in hand, but some sentences are so astonishing they make you question justice itself. From chilling acts of violence to heart-wrenching betrayals, these cases expose humanity's darkest depths and the insane consequences that follow. Let's take a look at some of the courtroom's craziest sentences.
I would submit that this case is probably the most difficult and shocking case that this county in St. Johns County has.
Aiden Fucci, only 14 years old at the time, brutally murdered his 13-year-old classmate from Patriots Oak Academy. He reportedly stabbed her a staggering 114 times before abandoning her body in the woods where it was later found. Following his arrest, Fucci was seen recording videos from the backseat of a police car and posting them on Snapchat.
We're having fun in a f***ing cop car.
Yep. Tristan.
What's up, guys? Yep. Tristan, if you f***ing walk out the damn...
When you see this in a month...
Later on, a video surfaced online, on Snapchat to be precise, where his parents were talking with him in an interrogation room, telling him that what he did was not even smart and was totally dumb. But they failed to use the right word, which was that he was a wicked and heartless person, stabbing a fellow human being 114 times. He pretty much just sat there, listening to them as he knew what he was into already. They also informed him that he was all over the news, which I'm sure he probably knew about already, as the evidence exposed him completely.
It's all over, you're all over the internet and everywhere. Social media.
It is on social media. You'll probably come stay with me after we get done with this. Just for your well, safe being.
This is serious.
It was well about hours after the parents of the deceased discovered that their daughter was missing at this point, and then decided to file a complaint. Since she was still a minor, it wasn't hard to declare her missing, and the search for the little girl began. Little did they know that she was dead already. The body of the 13-year-old was found on Mother's Day, the 9th of May, 2021, and her body was found in the worst state, as she had been stabbed and slashed by her killer, severally, in a pretty brutal and inhumane manner. You'd come to wonder what a 13-year-old would have done to deserve this kind of savage treatment.
How far did you go in school?
To 8th grade.
Are you able to read, write, speak, and understand the English language?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you under the influence of any medication, drugs?
Prosecutors presented a chilling video that allegedly showed Aiden Fucci walking with the girl shortly before her murder. In the same footage, Fucci was seen running away from the area where her body was later discovered, roughly 90 minutes after they had entered the location together. The victim's body was found with 114 stab wounds, including 49 defensive wounds, 35 to the head, 35 to the neck, 29 to the back and shoulders, and 6 fatal injuries. A truly horrifying scene. With all this overwhelming evidence, there was no hiding place for Fucci, as he had been caught red-handed already. In the state of all that, he had no other choice but to plead guilty because, yes, he was guilty, while pleading guilty to first-degree murder and awaiting the decision of the judge. It was pretty obvious and evident that this was going to be a strict sentence, but something to consider was the fact that he was a minor. Normally, an adult would immediately get a death sentence due to the gravity and heartlessness of the case, but his age earned him a bit of leverage as he was given a life sentence by the judge and also was given the chance to be able to review his sentence in the next 25 years, which is more like a guaranteed 25 years imprisonment and then a review that may see his life sentence terminated and he be set free instead.
I just want to say I plead out guilty, and I'm sorry for the Bailey family and my family.
Okay. I'm sure that there'll be an opportunity, obviously, at sentencing hearings.
When it was Alexis's turn to climb the stands to say something, she brought a glass jar and then she calculatedly dropped 114 aqua stone hearts into it, signifying the amount of stabs her sister had to endure before she died. Should have been a whole lot of pain one wouldn't even want to imagine. Try to think if she was alive for all of the 114 stabs. That's the real torture there. The jar was there for all the family members. When they came on to say something, they would place a white stone into the jar, a testament that was filled with all manner of emotions, but then ended in sorrow and anger, knowing the little girl was gone. While Fucci hadn't said why he chose to kill her, since they were attending the same school and were friends also. Some of his friends said he had a weird fascination with knives, and he just wanted to kill someone.
Not many know what Forrest and I faced during our pregnancy with Tristan. We were moving to another country, Singapore, when I found out I was expecting another child.
You expect the mother of the deceased to be the most hurt of everyone, and yes, that was exactly the case. A mother losing her child is the worst thing any mother would ever imagine. She made a statement to the judge stating, "Do not think he can be saved by rehabilitation. This is beyond saving," she said to the judge. But when you think about it, what would be going through the mind of a 13-year-old who got stabbed by a trusted friend 100 times and more without stopping? The thought of the scene traumatized Stacy, and she told Fucci, "You have brought pain on me, my family, her friends, and our entire community," since they were basically neighbors.
For me, I have always loved being a mother and vowed endlessly to love, teach, and protect my children. I spent so many weeks traveling with Tristan for cheer over the years.
When the father had the chance to speak, he wasted no time in immediately facing Fucci and letting him know that his insincere apology was not accepted at all. It was basically all emotions for him, as he stated all the horrors and pain he had been going through since his daughter's passing, the amount of money spent on therapy, and losing a sense of himself, specifically stating an event the entire family had every Sunday, Bailey Family Fun Day. But we both can agree that it wouldn't be the same again, knowing that the event could never be the same again. To cut the long story short, a really emotional moment from all members of the entire family, including older brother Tegan and Brittany, where Tegan saw his sister the day he came home to celebrate Mother's Day. They watched TV together before he went in, only to go wake her up on Mother's Day and find her room empty. He really couldn't forgive Fucci, and Brittany was on her honeymoon when she got the call about her sister, who was missing, and later on confirmed dead.
I, however, failed in one lesson. I did not know that I needed to teach Tristan to be afraid of the evil in her own school.
A really sad day for a really large family, as Fucci succeeded in breaking an entire family. A really large one at that. It's really hard to think that any one of them would even consider forgiving the culprit. After his sentence, though, it was pretty hard to see if the kiddo felt bad for what he had done, or if it was just an obvious case of, "I am proud of what I just did, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat," as the brother just stood there unmoved and unfazed.
God! 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 God!
Damon Kemp. The case of Damon Kemp, a teenager accused of murdering his friends in Daytona Beach, Florida in 2018, is both shocking and deeply puzzling. What makes this story particularly disturbing is the absence of the usual red flags that might hint at such a tragic outcome. Damon Kemp was known as a straight A student, a devoted son, and a trusted friend. So what could have driven him to commit such a horrifying act in December 2018? On December 7th, 2018, Damon approached police officers who were investigating a reported home invasion in Daytona Beach. Visibly distressed and gasping for air, he made a shocking admission: "I killed my friend." Stunned by his confession, officers immediately took him into custody. However, Damon offered no additional information, leaving investigators to unravel the grim sequence of events. 15 hours after Damon Kemp's shocking confession, the investigation led police to an apartment at 434 Jimmy Ann Drive. There they discovered a bullet hole in the door, a shell casing nearby, and the lifeless bodies of Trey Ingram and Jordan Patton inside. Both 19 years old, the victims had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Trey Ingram, affectionately known as Ace, was a local amateur boxer and former high school football star. A student at Bethune-Cookman University, he was working on returning to school. Jordan Patton, Trey's childhood friend since elementary school, shared a close bond with him. Quincy, a friend Damon had met at Bethune-Cookman University, shed light on Damon's alarming behavior in the weeks leading up to the murders. He described Damon as increasingly paranoid and erratic, frequently expressing fears that people were out to harm him. Damon's actions became so unsettling that at one point he attempted to crawl into bed with Quincy out of sheer fear. On the night of December 7th, Quincy drove Damon to Trey's apartment. Around 1:50 a.m., another resident, Korea Maktar, opened his door to find Damon pointing a firearm at him. Korea managed to calm Damon down enough to shut the door and call the police. This led to the police arriving at the scene, where Damon made his shocking confession. He shouted and made incoherent statements, leading many to speculate whether he was mentally ill or under the influence of substances at the time of the crime. His screams and shouts were really weird. as they were giving drug addict and I'm high on something, making one think he probably was on something prior to that time. As I have stated before, a few days after his arrest, Damon Kemp admitted during a jail phone call that he had been under the influence of substances at the time of the crime. He recalled only smoking weed but suggested it might have been laced with something else. While Damon denied having any history of mental illness, he was placed in the psychiatric unit of the jail. Following his conviction, he wasn't a minor, so it made his sentence somewhat easier, as any harsh punishment could be given without any sort of consideration, even a death sentence. I believe one saving grace Damon had was the fact that he was suspected of being on drugs or any sort of extra substance that altered his actions. Damon was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The fact that he went to a police officer to actually confess his crimes and all of that, one might try to even say that he was probably high or something, but it's pretty hard to say when his handprints were found on the gun that actually killed his friends.
That indeed. I tell you, deputies haven't yet released the motive behind the shooting, but right now, as Kemp is sitting behind bars, 2 families are planning funerals. Just a very sad story, Eric.
During the sentencing, the judge highlighted the gravity of the crime and the devastating impact it had on the families of Trey Ingram and Jordan Patton. In his remarks, the judge emphasized the profound loss of 2 young lives and the enduring pain and suffering endured by their loved ones. Trey's older sister, Laken Goldwire, also spoke and said, Trey was an amazing kid and was loved by all. Furthermore, she went on to state that he was a really mean and wicked person, as he took the goodness of 2 individuals who loved him and wanted to help him, and murdered them in cold blood. She made a statement, and it was a pretty resounding one. She said, "You shot Trey in his heart, the same organ that was used to create a space for him to know you." That was deep though, very deep, as it seemed rather disturbing for you to hear something like that. Sounds like his soul would be haunted forever. The question of whether Damon Kemp was genuinely experiencing a mental health crisis or simply pretending remains a point of speculation. On one hand, his erratic and paranoid behavior, as reported by Quincy, along with his placement in the psychiatric unit, suggests he may have been struggling with an underlying issue.
In both cases, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty and for no other reason? Guilty, yes. Okay.
Isaac Gonzalez. Isaac Gonzalez, 17, was sentenced to 40 years for murder and 20 years for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, with both sentences to run concurrently under a plea agreement. The decision was finalized last Thursday by 437th District Court Judge Joel Perez. Isaac Gonzalez's careless actions cost a life and inflicted severe injuries. This tragic incident highlights the danger when firearms end up in the hands of children, stated Bexar County Criminal District Attorney Joe Gonzalez. He extended condolences to the family of Novita Putri and expressed hope that the sentence would provide justice to both victims. Although Gonzalez was a minor at the time of the shooting, he was later certified to stand trial as an adult. His warrants were issued on October 20th, 2023.
Like a war zone, with more than 100 shots fired into a home.
The Bexar County Sheriff's Office identified Isaac Gonzalez as a suspect in a drive-by shooting that targeted the wrong house at approximately 12:45 a.m. on October 4th, 2022. Tragically, 25-year-old Novita Brazil was shot in the face while working on her computer in her bedroom and died almost instantly, according to Sheriff Javier Salazar. In addition to Novita's death, another woman, an Airbnb tenant who had just arrived the night before, suffered a gunshot wound to the leg. Around 100 rounds were fired at the home using several different weapons, further highlighting the reckless and deadly nature of the attack.
I'm gonna get another bond too. I'm gonna get another bond.
Deputies arrived at the scene to find one white 4-door vehicle speeding away from the area. Authorities were able to stop the vehicle a short time later near Highway 151 and Acme Road and make arrests. Multiple teenagers have been charged in the case, including 15-year-old Renee Gonzalez, who was charged with murder. Gonzalez, who was on the run after his case, didn't stop, where, when he got caught, he taunted police officials on live TV. Bexar County Criminal District Attorney Joe Gonzalez said in his statement, "Our condolences to Novita Putri's family, and may the sentence deliver justice to both parties." Based on the fact that the murder wasn't planned or anything whatsoever, it couldn't really be tied to him as the murderer, but a street shooting gone wrong. Regardless of that, though, he was in possession of some firearms, and several shots were fired. Approximately 100 shots, or even more than that, and it ended the life of a youngster who was just starting her life and was pretty much thinking about how to move to the next stage of her life. He was sentenced to about 40 years in jail, plus another 20 years, which would be served consecutively over counts of murder and another charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in hand.
Murked in court, but pleaded guilty.
While his trial was going on and all the sentences were being passed, Gonzalez also appeared to be smirking in court following his sentence, even after admitting to the crimes he committed. His neighbor, who caught the footage of the shooting, said in an interview that she believes he doesn't realize how much he had hurt a lot of people.
And based on the evidence of the two trials I presided over, there's no doubt that you caused all the death and carnage in this case.
Michael Sykes. Michael Sykes is another case that would continue to baffle many in several years to come. The definition of what a coward is. Michael Sykes was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder when he brutally stabbed 2 of his girlfriend's children to death. Among the 2 kids he stabbed, one of them was his. Ziana Cutler, who was just 1 year old, was not his direct kid but his girlfriend's, with her previous boyfriend perhaps, and then Malia Sykes, a 4-month-old child who was his own, but still did not escape certain death from her father. While we think the only thing he was guilty of was killing Malaya and Ziana, that was not just it. He also attempted to kill a 3rd child, Miracle Cutler, as he also stabbed her mercilessly. But then she showed strength and utter resilience by not dying and staying alive despite her father's strong will to put an end to her life. And that was not just all. He also attempted to end the life of his girlfriend too by stabbing her, but thankfully she survived and was able to drag him to justice in November of 2017. While the murder of Malia and Ziana, then the attempted murder on the 3rd child, Miracle, that survived, all happened on the 10th of February 2016 inside the Ramada Inn that was located at Staten Island. When you thought the case would easily be concluded with Michael Sykes being the abrupt killer and possibly immediately sentenced to any sort of harsh punishment, as he allegedly killed 2 daughters and also killed their mother. Here's the twist. He said he didn't kill his daughters. Michael was a very loving dad to his kids, both the one he had directly with Rebecca and the ones that Rebecca had before they were together. He said Rebecca murdered the 2 girls, and then when he came and saw that, he stabbed Rebecca to death. His mother also confirmed that after the incident happened, he called her with a shaky voice, telling her that he had killed his girlfriend and he wanted to kill himself now. It became really confusing at a point and somehow felt like the defense was trying to manufacture lies to save the skin of the persecuted. What's more, it really made sense seeing that he was not a man of violence and doesn't have any violent record. Gallucci, who was the defense lawyer and the defendant for Michael Sykes, gave his all for this case and even managed to put the court in a difficult situation when he stated that Michael was innocent, repeating that Rebecca killed the little girls and not the father. And come to think about it, I really can't believe that's what happened. And this is just a case of Michael being unlucky and, once again, another case of solid injustice added to the pile of injustice already in the judiciary and legislative system.
Justice should be tempered with mercy. This is not one of those cases.
There was no leniency as to the verdict of all the crimes committed. Even with the claim of Michael Sykes and his defendant Gallucci, the court still had valid evidence that he killed all the affected in that scenario. It's easier to tie a murder to someone who is still alive than one who is already dead, so the claim of Rebecca killing her kids seemed invalid, whereas Michael was possibly jealous that Rebecca was leaving him and going back to her old boyfriend, meaning that he wouldn't get to keep his kids. In frustration and guilt, he left the house of the friend he was staying with, took one of her knives, and headed to carry out the mission in mind. The street footage captured showed his hastiness and panic state as he knew what he had done. His sentence. He was sentenced to prison for life without the option of parole on counts of first-degree murder for Ziana Cutler and another life sentence on the same count for Malia Sykes. He also received a second-degree charge of attempted murder for Miracle, who survived. He got 25 years for that and another 25 years for the murder of Rebecca. All these were expected to run consecutively. as stated by the judge. He also made a statement that would have let Michael know his fate was sealed. The judge said they'd ask us to tamper mercy with justice, but that won't be done here. Was he guilty or innocent? That we don't know, but all we know for sure was that he was involved in murder, and realistically, he'd be pretty inhuman if he really tried to end the lives of his babies.
In count 1, murder, we, the jury, recommend and fix the penalty as death.
Tiffany Moss. Imani Moss, the stepdaughter of Tiffany Moss, died on a Monday morning while she was being starved intentionally by her stepmother, who made sure the 10-year-old child died of starvation and thereafter proceeded to burn the body and bury it to conceal all evidence. The Gwinnett County mother was tried the next day, and the jury decided that she be put to death.
A Gwinnett County stepmother stared straight ahead, briefly looked down for just a moment before she raised her head again, and then
she was convicted of exactly 6 charges in respect to this case: murder, felony murder, cruelty to children, first degree, and concealing the death of another, with counts of felony murder and first degree appearing more than once. The district attorney for Gwinnett County stated that the punishment for this crime had to fit the offense, and in this case, the offense was utterly vile and completely inhuman. Starvation is a form of torture, even more so for a 10-year-old girl. The sentence was fitting and proper for cruelty of such magnitude. The father of Imani, Eman, came up to testify for his wife, and it was really evident that he was trying to cover up for her in order to avoid the death penalty.
Iman allegedly calculated every part of Imani's abuse and death,
while jumping from one story to another, to a new one again, confusing the entire courtroom. But this was a room filled with really intelligent individuals who would not be fooled by the made-up lies. It was a really sad scene also to see the burnt body of little Imani, completely and totally heartbreaking.
Going forward from this point.
In terms of representation, or is there something you need from the court that you don't have?
While Judge George Hutchinson gave Tiffany an opportunity to speak to the court during her death trial, she seemed rather unfazed and had absolutely nothing major to say. As a matter of fact, she was even laughing while she was trying to speak to the judge, showing no sense of remorse or any kind of regret for what she did to her stepdaughter.
Offensive murder as alleged in count 1 was outrageously or wantonly vile, horrible, or inhuman in that it involved torture of the victim before death.
George Hutchinson requested the verdict of the jurors on the penalty that Tiffany Moss would face. Of course, it had to be a unanimous decision by all the jurors, and they all decided that she be sentenced to death, which the prosecutor did not flinch at all.
We're returning to 18B 1541-1, State of Georgia versus Tiffany Nicole Moss. The defendant's present along with standby counsel. State's counsel's present as well.
The judge took another 3 minutes to interrogate every single juror whose decision made it to his table, asking if their decision was theirs and if it still remained the same. The jurors all agreed and answered yes, completing and ending a case that seemed like it would take more time than expected. If you enjoyed these cases, then make sure to watch our next ones shown on screen.